What's up, everybody? So today in this video, Nacho and I are going to tell you all about some of the trauma that I've recently been discovering many people in the Airtable community are finding, specifically you Zapier users, and how that trauma does not have to be anymore. With these new Airtable automations, I'm going to talk about those and how you can get rid of your past trauma. And if you want some of this set up for you and your business, you can help fund Nacho and request a consultation from me or someone on my team with the link in the description, and we can figure out what needs you have and give you some free advice on that call. So without further ado, we'll get right in the video now. Alright, so as you can see, putting Nacho down, we are in the sales CRM here. And so the trauma that I wanted to talk about, and trauma is something that's been brought up in a few conversations with me recently, not about me specifically, not that I need to be ashamed to talk about that, but trauma regarding COVID and how COVID will be a trauma for many people in this lifetime and how that can be passed down as a generational trauma. So the example that got brought up here recently was some of my friends were watching a movie and they're like astonished that people didn't have to wear masks in the movie, even though we've lived on this, like most people my age, we've lived here for 22 years on Earth, haven't had to wear masks for much of that time. But for Airtable users, specifically Airtable users who prior to like September 2020 heavily integrated with Zapier, and still do, this still can be a trauma, but I don't think it'll be a trauma forever. So it's going to be up to many of the developers, the workspace administrators, the base administrators to break this trauma and not pass it on to your employees, to your friends, to your collaborators, to the base collaborators, and to the workspace collaborators. So the trauma occurs when you have views over here that are locked. When you have a locked view and it's like Zapier automation, do not touch, never mess with this view, or like something, because so the point of this is Zapier limits you to two triggers. Those two triggers being when a record is created, so any record in a table, when that's created, triggers the automation. The other is when a record enters a view. So many people have just like a ton of different views, and they use these views to like add filters up here and say when a record matches these specific conditions to these filters, then it will enter this view, and then and only then will it trigger my automation here. And so that's really the dilemma that we're coming into, is somebody new coming in over here, they'll see like 5 different views for 5 different Zapier automations because there's 5 different like things that need to happen, and that's fine, but we can break the cycle of being ourselves and switch that up with some of the new automations. So this video is solely about 2 different automation triggers, and so I don't even know if we might be close to the limit here, but this is trauma. So the 2 triggers are when a record matches conditions and when a record enters a view. And so I want to conceptualize this a little bit. So when a record enters a view, what you are doing there is you're locking a view so that nobody else can edit it or mess it up, so your automation always works perfectly. But more so, you are setting filters to that view to match certain conditions. So like filters you might set up is the number has to equal 1. And so for one of these, that's the case. And you might also set up some fail safes in here, so like the name is not empty. And I don't know what else in here, but like some of these are not empty. So not the computed fields, because those are always going to not be empty or whatever. But like accounts is not empty. So you might have some filters up here, and that's the only thing restricting this view from being when a record is created. If there's no filters, then it is essentially the same as when a record is created. So that is the first part of this. Now, the trauma becomes when people start switching to Airtable automations. because now Airtable Automations has a great thing in here called winner record matches conditions. So if we're still in this opportunities table, instead of using this view that we set up to match like the filters up here, what we have here is we can just add the filters in the automation. So that's very powerful. It's similar to like using the trigger when a record is created and adding filters in the Zap, but that requires that extra step in there versus doing it natively in Airtable. So this allows you to add these same conditions up here. So when number equals 1, so we'll say when number equals 1, when I remembered like the accounts was not empty, so wherever that is, we'll maybe add stuff like that. But that's the whole premise of this, is that you're adding these same filters in here. And so now when you're onboarding someone, or when Zapier migrates to something more like the win records matches conditions, you won't have the trauma instilled in people who are currently using Airtable, who have used it for the past few years and they're used to having these views. They're like, how are you doing all your automations without views? It's like, well, I'm smart and I'm using the winner record matches conditions trigger because I'm not cluttering my whole table with my whole base with a ton of views that don't serve the simplicity of what Airtable should be. And I know a lot of times Airtable can get very, like this one particularly, we've been adding tables on here throughout this series in the sales CRM with all the different tutorials that I've done. You can see all the different automations over here, and now I probably lost that one. But trauma down here, the trauma occurs when we have too many views over here and we never clean those up and transfer them to a more efficient, like the new processes come out from whether it's Integromat, Zapier, or Airtable itself, and we don't switch to the new. We need to be updating our information systems to make them more simple so that when we hire people, when people move onto our team, it's a lot simpler to use and you don't have to do as much explaining, because if this is set up, you just have to say, hey, this is happening and it's through an automation. You don't have to worry about it. There's no view it's correlated to. It's just don't delete this table instead of don't delete this table. Also don't delete this view. So that's this in a nutshell. Now, if you haven't used Airtable automations or really any automations at all, I encourage you to go watch this video right up here. It is all about an introduction to automations. So this is specifically in Airtable. I'm going to be going through what a trigger is, what some actions are, and really get you started with automations. So if you're interested in that, just go click on the end screen right there. If you want any services setting up automations or database development in your business, you can check out the link in the description, request a consultation from me or someone on my team. But I really highly encourage you to go check that out and learn all about Airtable automations. I think you'll really enjoy it, and I look forward to it. I'll see you there.